Welcome to the Duder Podcast. I'm your host, Duder. What would you do if you were stranded on a desert island? That's our question. As I sit here in my office with a blanket around me to help with the sound, and sitting here with my blue Yeti mic off of Amazon.com that I ordered 2 years ago and have only just now recently started to use. I sit in my office and I ponder that question. What would you do if you were stranded on a desert island? That's our question for the very first episode of the Duder Podcast. I watched a movie this evening, and I often try to decompress at the end of the day after I've worked. Today I was able to stay home most of the day, get a few things done, office work. I run my business, and it's been nice to be able to be home for the past couple days, as usually I'm running many errands. But this evening, after all my office work was done, I was able to sit down on the couch as my wife, Natalie, did a bunch of house chores. I'm not sure what she was doing, but she vacuumed and vacuumed and vacuumed. I offered to help, but she kindly denied and said, "No, babe, you relax and enjoy your evening." And it just reminds me just how kind she is and how lucky I am to have her. But back to the point. I watched a movie this evening, and, as I sat there on the couch, I was scrolling through YouTube, scrolled through Netflix, and sometimes you just get that overwhelm of choice, and you get fatigued just thinking about, I don't really feel like watching that. I don't really feel like watching this. I don't really know if I'm in the mood for that. Then I looked to see if there was any NBA games on, checked to see if there was any NFL. Of course there's not any NFL because it's literally the Super Bowl next week and Cincinnati just lost. I'm not bitter. I'll get over it. Whatever. Joe Burrow does not have any help on that offensive line. All right, sorry. For those of you that are listening, if you're a lady, I'm sorry if you don't get those references. But for you fellas that are listening, I know that you can relate, especially if you live down here in Louisiana. Joe Burrow obviously transferred from Ohio, which now he's back in Ohio. But he transferred from Ohio, came down here to good old LSU, and he became a Tiger and a legend after their 2019 football season, obviously undefeated. Probably the greatest season of all time for a college football team and college football program. And then we just dropped off. We had a decent year this past year, but we dropped off unbelievably. It was sad, just sad. But this year was good. We beat Bama. Shout out to Evan Schofield, my old friend from Bama. And but he got his revenge when Mahomes beat Joe last night. Such a heartbreaking loss, just heartbreaking, honestly. But to the main point, and that weird question that I asked you at the beginning, what would you do if you were stranded on a desert island? Just think about that for a second. No electricity, no friends or family. You don't have your spouse. You don't have any contact with the outside world. You don't have TikTok. You don't have Instagram. What? Yeah, that's right. You don't have anything. No internet. Can't Google anything. No running water, no toilet paper. Just the day-to-day things that we take for granted. Suddenly you're without any of those luxuries that we have in our country. As Americans, we're pretty spoiled. Take a look at third world countries, India, Africa, certain parts of Africa, the Philippines. I remember my dad when he took a missionary trip to the Philippines. I mean, he's told story after story, just gut-wrenching and heartbreaking stories about just how life is in other countries and the luxuries that we have and how fortunate we are. And I just keep pondering this question. What if one day, let's say I'm on a plane, on a boat, a cruise, I just all of a sudden the boat crashes or the cruise, the plane crashes, and I'm stuck all by myself on a desert island. Be a pretty sucky situation, to say the least. But I got to thinking about it. I'm like, I don't even know if I can put myself there in my mind. And yes, I'll get to the point here. This evening, as I sat down, scrolling through a few different movies, I had seen this movie before. I'd seen it before, but it's been a long time, and I was younger, so I couldn't fully appreciate it or understand it. Does anybody else do that? Does anybody else go back and watch those old movies that you loved growing up, or movies that you saw when you were a kid, and you didn't necessarily love them, you just really didn't even understand them? But then going back now, you understand it as an adult, and it's like, oh my word, was I just dumb? No, you were just a kid. So you didn't really understand completely. You couldn't appreciate it because you hadn't gone through life experiences. The movie that I picked out was the 2000 Turn of the Millennium, Y2K, the 2000 Oscar-nominated movie Castaway, starring Tom Hanks. Castaway. Wilson! Okay, for those of you that are not familiar with Castaway, you're not going to get that reference whatsoever, but most people will. Castaway. Such a simple synopsis for a movie. I mean, so simple. I can really appreciate just a bare bones story. There's no politics. It's not complicated. A man who loves his wife. I don't know. Were they married? I missed that part. I was kind of working. But anyway, a man who has a significant other, a loved one, who essentially works for FedEx. I mean, talk about an ad for FedEx. This movie is the biggest ad for FedEx that you will ever see in your life. You talk about product placement. The only other product placement I can think of was Dr. Pepper. I think I saw Dr. Pepper at the end of the movie. Does anybody else pay attention to that when you're watching a movie? I pay so close attention to ad placement. I mean, with obviously me running a business and marketing my business, and I literally will just watch ads, and people are like, well, you want to watch the ads? Because I want to, okay? And I will literally watch a movie and pay attention to that. And I know that sounds crazy. It's like, why would you pay attention to that? That's what I pay attention to. I don't know what else to tell you. That's what I really pay close attention. I was like, okay, for instance, Transformers. Oh my goodness. Talk about an egregious, just egregious with how much ad placement and product placement. It's like Xbox, Mountain Dew, Cadillac, Ford, the Chevy Camaro. I mean, you go on and on the list with Transformers, a movie like that. The product placement is ridiculous. But I digress. Castaway, the biggest ad for FedEx that you've ever seen. I'm sure UPS was ticked that they lost that opportunity. I don't know if there was, I'm wondering if there was a bidding war between, well, we want to be the ones that are on Castaway to be the delivery system. No, we're the better ones. We're obviously the better choice. I don't know if there was a bidding war there for UPS or FedEx to end up, getting that gig for Castaway. I don't know. But anyway, in the movie, Tom Hanks, he was Oscar nominated for his performance in Castaway. Such a simple story. Really just a good classic movie. Turn of the millennium, turn of the century, whatever you want to call it. Just a good, solid movie. I believe Tom Hanks even produced it as well. And you can see his fingerprints throughout the movie. I'm kind of a movie buff. I like movies. I love watching movies. I think it gives me a good perspective on life, whether religiously, my faith, just having a good outlook on the world anyway. Now, obviously, I'm not going to purposely watch just pure filth. I mean, I don't really watch horror movies. I don't watch movies that I know going in like, okay, Magic Mike XXL. I'm assuming that's not a magician that's overweight who's named Mike. I've seen the commercials for it years ago, and I'm like, well, I don't think I'm going to see that. Or am I? well, Natalie doesn't have to know. Anyway, so Castaway, good solid movie. If you've seen it, comment below. Leave a comment. If you can comment, I don't know. I'm going to post this on YouTube, Anchor, maybe a few other places, Instagram, and link it to my YouTube. And you guys can have a listen when you have some free time. Hey, the best time to listen to me right now would maybe be during your morning routine. Maybe you're cooking breakfast. Maybe you have your headphones on. So I'll get real close to the mic right about now and going to talk to you a little bit. And then I'm going to back out and I'm going to make it sound a little bit better. Maybe you're listening to me while you're stuck in traffic. Don't flip anybody off. It's not worth it. It's literally just a finger. I mean, doesn't do any good. Maybe you're listening while you're sitting in your recliner, sitting in your chair. Maybe you got me turned on the TV. I have had people do that before years ago when I was doing Devotions with Duder. I got screenshots from people watching my old videos on their TV. I'm like, I feel like y'all are like having movie night to watch Devotions with Duder. Those of you that know, well, you know. Castaway, such a unique movie. I really like it. It's just kind of just an old, classic, simple movie. I've always liked movies. I mean, growing up, I grew up with Barney. Please don't laugh at me. Barney, Blue's Clues. Those were kind of the TV shows, obviously. But there was a couple movies that I really loved. I just loved watching TV as a kid. I did. It was just kind of an escape. It just gave me just so much entertainment and distraction from my day-to-day life as a kid, and it really just meant so much to me. Just funny movies, not even necessarily funny movies. Like I would watch Three Stooges, Abbott and Costello. Some of you probably don't even know what the heck I'm talking about right now. My dad would make us watch Andy Griffith, Gilligan's Island, just old-fashioned TV shows and movies. I Dream of Jeannie. Now, some people deem that, oh, that's so inappropriate. Her outfit is dreadful. Well, get over it, you prude. Anyway, so I watched a lot of TV shows. A lot of movies. I love old TV shows. I love old movies. I mean, just the nostalgia and the classic look and feel. Those movies, they just feel different. Movies nowadays, in which I'll touch on this later in the episode, but just movies back then, they just have that certain magic about them, They were just trying to tell a story and make a good movie. That's all they were trying to do. Like, it was just plain and simple, and they made a great movie. And that's all it was back then. They wanted to make a movie that was going to make money, but also tell a story, and it was artistic, and it meant something. Nowadays, movies, they just kind of, I won't dive into that. But anyway, I've just had a love for movies since I was a kid. I used to watch the Power Rangers movie over and over and over again. I had this really weird problem from ages 3 to 9 years old. Like, I watched all the Pixar movies over and over again. Cars 1. I didn't grow up on Cars 2, but Cars, Finding Nemo. I mean, all that stuff was coming out when I was a kid. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, the golden age of Pixar and the golden age of DreamWorks, Shrek 2, Kung Fu Panda, Madagascar. I mean, the list goes on and on. Just the golden age of cinema for a kid, for Pixar, DreamWorks, I don't know if anybody else can relate to that, but if you're listening to this, there's just so many fond memories that I have. The Incredibles. Oh, I love The Incredibles. I mean, I literally used to put a DVD into my DVD player, and those are obsolete now. I had 100 VCRs. I mean, I had every Disney movie that you could think of. I just loved movies. I literally watched Toy Story 2 probably no less than 50 times. Toy Story 2, that was my crap, man. That was my stuff right there, man. That was my thing, man. I tell you. But such a cool thing growing up with all those movies. Like I said, golden age of Pixar. Pixar's kind of fallen off, and maybe it's because I'm not a kid anymore. But I think the quality's going down, because you go back and watch those old Pixar movies and those old DreamWorks movies, and it's just night and day. It's just night and day. And again, it might just be my nostalgia. Maybe it's just I have a soft spot for those older movies growing up. I'm not a kid anymore, so obviously, Christmas feels different, movies feel different, everything feels different when you're an adult, and that's kind of a sucky part of life. But there's so many good things being an adult and being your own person and growing up. There's a lot of positives to that, obviously. But I digress once again. Essentially, the movies that I grew up watching, I mean, unfortunately kind of formed my personality and who I am. Obviously, the what you consume, I mean, obviously it becomes a part of you. And so, like, your brain never forgets anything, even though you might not remember it consciously, subconsciously you remember everything. So it's just really cool. I've just always loved movies. It's like you get to escape and go into a whole new world for 2 hours, and it's just fun. I just love to watch fun classic movies. To this day, I literally will watch something I've seen 20 times before I watch something new, because I'm like, this is probably gonna be dookie butt. Like, like there's movies on Netflix like, oh, come watch the new Netflix original, Hot Toddy. No thanks, I don't want to watch it. It's probably going to have some lame millennial humor, or some lame Gen Z humor. Not interested. Not interested. But yeah, like I said, I just grew up loving movies. I just love them. I'm a movie buff, and that's just something I've always loved. So tonight, literally this evening, probably just an hour ago, I sit down, I get myself a can of Diet Coke, not sponsored. Essentially, I sit down, plop myself on the couch. Natalie's working on a few things in the kitchen, and I finish up my task for the day, and I say, you know what? I'm just going to sit here and just watch a movie. Usually me and Natalie watch a movie together. She always wants to watch comedy. Like, never fails. She's wanting to watch some comedy movie. I'm like, let's watch a drama, or let's watch a, an old Western, or let's watch a sci-fi movie, with Tom Cruise where he travels into the future and then back to the past. And she's never interested in any of that. She wants to watch comedy. Doing, doing. So that's her speed. That's that's what she wants to watch. And obviously, I love comedy. I love comedic movies, obviously, but a lot of comedy movies now, quote unquote comedy, in parentheses, quotation marks, whatever you want to say it. Most comedy movies just aren't great nowadays. Either they're super vulgar, or they're just ridiculous, or they're so stupid that they're not funny. Now, I love movies that are so stupid that they are funny, but movies nowadays are so stupid and bland that they just aren't funny. Just comment if you agree, because I mean that's just the truth. I mean, I don't know. There may only be 4 people listening to this, but the 4 of you that are listening, comment below. I mean, give me some help here. Give me some backup, because that's my honest to goodness opinion on this. Is just movies just aren't funny. Like, comedy movies are just not comedic anymore. They're not funny. But yeah, like I said, always loved movies. Love growing up. I sit down on the couch this evening. I get on Hulu. and I don't know why I'm still signed up for Hulu. I think I got it earlier, earlier this year, for an LSU game or something, and I forgot to delete it. But I've been watching Hulu and watching sports and stuff, and it's been really nice. But I should definitely remember to unsubscribe. But anyway, I'll probably end up keeping it and forgetting. But I sit down, I turn on Castaway. I've seen it before, so I wasn't glued in 100%. Like I wasn't totally committed, like just geared up, like just zoned in watching the movie. But I watched probably 90% of it, I'd say. And I paid attention pretty closely. I'm able to multitask pretty well. Some people can't. Some people, I try. I'm not the best multitasker, but I try my best. But I sit there and I'm watching Castaway, watching the beginning of it, and I love the pacing of this movie. The whole thing is this: like nowadays, movies are just so bing bang boom bam bing bing, and they're so fast, or they're way too slow. Movies are just terribly paced nowadays. I don't know if anybody else notices that or realizes that when you watch a movie and like how you experience a movie. It's like either it's way too fast and they shove everything in your face and they make everything happen at once, and it's just not gratifying. It's not as satisfying if, everything happens at once. It's so much better when everything just draws out perfectly and concludes at a good rate, and relationships and character arcs and all that stuff. You want that stuff to happen naturally and feel natural, and feel like it's all timed out correctly, and it's not just rushed or abrupt. You want it to be smooth. That's one positive thing I can definitely say about Castaway, is that it is excellently paced. And I really appreciate that about older movies. Movies these days, too fast or too slow. You got to have something in between. I mean, a good balance is where it's at. And that applies to life, kids. A good balance. But I really want to dig into Castaway and really talk about it, because it really spoke to me. I kind of had a few thoughts and a few takeaways that I really find interesting, and that I think you will find interesting as well as you continue to listen. But the whole plot, to summarize the plot of Castaway, really boils down to the question that I posed at the beginning of the video. What would you do if you were stranded on a desert island? Your whole life's over. Everyone at home and everybody in society thinks you're dead. Imagine putting yourself in that place. Put yourself in Chuck's shoes. Excuse me. That's embarrassing. Tom Hanks plays a character, Chuck, works for FedEx, travels all around the world. This time, he gets on a plane. Long story short, he says goodbye to his wife or his girlfriend, I forget. She, they kiss each other goodbye. They have a couple moments. And the movie does take its time in the beginning to kind of build up the characters and those relationships, and it's all very believable. So I'm glad the movie took its time to kind of build that up. It wasn't like the movie opened up with Tom Hanks being stranded on an island. They built up to it, built up his career, his relationships, and the foreshadowing is excellent. It's really good. I really appreciate when a movie foreshadows what's going to happen and kind of drops little hints for you. And you don't notice it until maybe you watch a movie again, or you watch a movie for the second time, and then you're able to appreciate it a little more. That foreshadowing, that's just an indication of really good writing. And I can really appreciate good writing. Again, movies nowadays, the writing's just poor. It's just really poor. But anyway, like I said, with Castaway, the whole overall story, the whole plot, it's very simple. Tom Hanks gets on a plane, something blows up in the plane goes down. It's a pretty gruesome scene, by the way. Pretty gruesome scene, where Tom Hanks, he's in the airplane, he's going down. I mean, it's for for a movie from 2000, I mean, it's pretty well done. The special effects and everything. It looks like everything was pretty much physical, literal, real special effects. It wasn't like CGI. Everything's CGI and green screen nowadays. And I think I can really, again, appreciate the effort of just good old fashioned special effects, set pieces, and it being real. And not to say that they didn't use any CGI in Castaway, because I think they did for a couple scenes, especially when Chuck, Tom Hanks's character, Chuck, climbs up to the top of the mountain on the island that he ends up getting stranded on, climbs up to the top, and that shot, it didn't look good. That was one of the shots in the movie where I was like, this does not look good. Well, back to the drawing board. I was just like, okay, maybe you should have, spent a little more time on that animation. But like I said, Chuck, should I say, Tom Hanks, not Tom Cruise. I hope I haven't been saying Tom Cruise. I'm a complete idiot. Tom Hanks's character, Chuck, gets stranded on an island, wakes up, and one of the benefits of and I like how they worked this out in the plot. It didn't seem forced. It didn't seem like, the FedEx packages from the plane end up washing up on the shore. And so, I mean, not everything was just super useful, but Chuck found a way to use everything, like the ice skates. I thought that was extremely lucky, but it didn't feel forced. It felt like something that could happen, something that made sense. So at first, Chuck is really having a hard time. He's getting beat up. He tries to swim out. He gets his leg cut open. He gets his hand cut open trying to start a fire. He has a lot of small setbacks and a lot of small obstacles and some big obstacles, but he also has some small victories. And that's really a really cool part and aspect of the story, is like it really zones in on the small problems that Chuck experiences on the island, and the big issues and the big problems, the overall, like, hey, is it worth even trying to stay alive when I'm stranded on this island, So it kind of poses those questions, but it shows those small victories, like being able to start a fire, when he catches a crab, when he cooks a crab, when he, catches the little fish, when he starts opening all the FedEx packages and sees all the useful tools that he's going to be able to use to survive. Long story short, the overall plot, there's like a switching place where Tom Hanks's character Chuck, like, has an abscessed tooth or something, knocks that tooth out, knocks himself out, and the very next scene is it, has the caption on the screen, 4 years later. And I like to think that he knocked himself out and woke up 4 years later. I don't know why, that just made me laugh, but I do that with movies sometimes. I literally will pause a movie when me and Natalie are watching it, and I'll make jokes as the movie's going on. It's like Anna Green Gables comes out with the ugliest dress you ever saw. That dress looked like it got puke on it, something stupid, but anyway, the next scene where you see Chuck, he's thin, his beard is long like Moses, his hair, he looks really rough, he's got a killer tan, may I say. He's got a killer tan. This tan is unbelievable. I mean, this tan is just like, the Kardashians would be jealous of this sun-kissed look that Chuck was pulling off there. But yeah, that you get to kind of see in this next portion of the movie, after 4 years of being on this island. Yes, he survived that long, 1,500 days. I think that's what he wrote. It was just unbelievable, just the progress that you saw, not just in his skills and his survival skills, but you also saw the progress, or should I say the regress, in his mental state. He's talking to Wilson more, the volleyball that he literally like painted blood and painted a face on it with his own blood. He starts to have conversations with Wilson. And in reality, he's having conversations with himself, and he's really losing it, like he's losing his mind. And again, the big question for the episode that I started off with, what would you do? How far would you go? Would you fight to survive in that situation? Like it's just so crazy. Like sometimes we just watch movies and we don't really think about them, and it's like you really need to think about the lesson or the message of the movie. Now, most movies, they don't have a good lesson and they don't have a good message, but older movies like this, they tend to have a really good message. And it tends to work, and it tends to be applicable to your life. And it's just an amazing thing. As I was sitting there, I was enjoying just that transition of insanity. Like, this guy is losing it. You know, they kind of make a hint at Chuck, Tom Hanks's character Chuck. They hint at that he wanted to hang himself, and that, you know, he wanted to kill himself. And Chuck has those conversations with Wilson throughout the, you know, this portion of the movie. It's like right before the end, and for about 10 minutes there, he long story short, Chuck finds like something washes on the shore. It's like a porta potty thing or something. It's made out of metal. Chuck puts together a raft. He builds it, and starts, you know, getting everything set up, ready to go. He goes into the ocean, brings Wilson with him. Sad story. He loses Wilson in the water, and there's this scene where Chuck has to decide to hold on to the rope that's holding the raft, or, you know, use his last bit of energy and because I can imagine his strength wasn't very much at this point. I'm sure he's pretty weak, so he had to either hold on to the raft or go after Wilson, because literally Wilson's a freaking volleyball. He's drifting out to the ocean. He's like, Wilson, Wilson. So at this point, it's fairly obvious that this is not going to end well, and that Wilson drifts away. And there's just kind of this heartbreaking scene where, like, Chuck is laying on his raft and he's just boo-hooing, crying, because literally he just lost his only quote-unquote companion from the past 4 years, being stranded on an island. No human contact, no cell phone, no nothing, just literally talking to a frickin' volleyball. So anyway, that's kind of the overall plot at that point. Basically, a big old huge boat finds them, brings them back home, back to civilization. But the key to this whole thing is, the whole time Chuck kept that little picture. There's a little picture that, like a little clock, a little watch, I guess you could say, like a little watch from, you know, 1940, 1930, whatever. A little watch that had Chuck's significant other, the chick, the Kelly, I think Kelly is her name, in the movie. And beautiful actress, like just I could really believe the relationship between her and Tom Hanks's character. It was really sold. I was sold on it. Like, I was convinced that these two people were in love. They loved each other. And I just so totally appreciate romance in movies now, because now, being married to the love of my life, like, it's just like, I mean, I get teary-eyed just watching movies like this. Like, I'm an extremely sensitive person. And like, and most people don't know that, but like, I'm an extremely sensitive person, and I really wear my heart on my sleeve. And like, me and Natalie, like, you know, our relationship and our bond that we have, I watch movies now where you have these love interests and these relationships, and they're just so much more relatable on a deeper level. And it's like, it's just really cool to kind of see how different relationships in the world and movies, and, you know, obviously the movies aren't real, and, you know, romance is, you know, not quite as romanticized, with a lack of better words, romanticized in movies, but it just has a different feeling now. Now that, you know, I have that significant other, I have, you know, that love of my life. But you can just tell between Tom Hanks's character and Kelly, and I forget the actress's name, but Kelly and Chuck, you know, this comes to the point where the movie, Chuck's coming back home. It's a big, huge story. They're reporting it to the news. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal, and everybody's like, cheering and excited. It's in the news. FedEx has this big old huge plane and a big huge ceremony, and Chuck's character goes into this meeting room, boardroom, to see Kelly, but Kelly couldn't bring herself to see him that day, and her husband, yep, spoiler alert, Kelly has married somebody, had kids, and she had to let go of Chuck. Like, it had been 4 years, so she had to move on and let go. Everybody told her to move on, and I love how it plays out, because essentially, in the end, they reunite, but they don't stay together. They reunite, they kiss, they hug, they cry, they reminisce, and they talk about the past, and it's almost like, really, at this point in the movie, Chuck goes over to Kelly's house, they talk, and it's almost like the best form of closure that you could ever have. They both had obligations, especially Kelly. Kelly just couldn't up and leave her husband and her kids and the life that she had now. So that was really kind of the biggest heartbreak of the whole movie. Sorry, Wilson. But the biggest heartbreak of the whole movie is the fact that they couldn't be reunited, that they were both the love of their life, and they couldn't be reunited because of what had happened. And again, it's like putting yourself in their shoes, even though they're fictional characters. It's like, man, like that's heavy, man. That's really heavy, man. I don't know. That's pretty tough. But anyway, so that's kind of the whole plot of the story. I hate how it ends. I hate when movies end like this. It's like, it's not quite a cliffhanger, but it's just not quite as satisfying as I wanted it to be. I wanted him and Kelly to get back together, or I wanted him to find a new girlfriend or something, something. But really, it just ends in a very, I guess you could say, simple way. That, hey, the movie ends with Chuck, Tom Hanks' character, Chuck, he's in a crossroad, literally. He's in the middle of nowhere. He goes and returns a package to a lady who had this logo that she put on her packages, and this logo that she made and fabricated. It was on her truck, and basically it kept Chuck alive, so that was the thing that kept him going, the picture of Kelly and that little logo that was on that package. It kept him going and said, hey, I got to return this package and I have to get back to Kelly. And those were the two motivating factors that kept him alive and kept him going. So yeah, the end of the movie ends with Tom Hanks looking towards the horizon, and that was it. That was the movie. Basically, my favorite parts of the movie would have to be the actual comedy of the movie. Like it was actually pretty funny. The dynamic between him and Wilson, a volleyball. Those are some of my favorite part. My favorite part, of course, is when Kelly and him get reunited, and it was just so passionate, and it was just the love that you could see between the two of them. It was just special. They're both excellent actors, and it was believable. So that was my favorite part. And obviously just the comedy between, just Tom Hanks and his performance. I'd say the only cons to the movie is there was just a few tiny little plot holes, things that really didn't belong or make sense. Like towards the end of the movie, right before Chuck gets saved or gets rescued, like a whale keeps waking him up. I guess the whale stayed with him or something. The whale kept blowing its blowhole out of its butthole or blowhole, whatever. He kept blowing his, whatever. Kept blowing and getting water on them and waking them up in the middle of the ocean and stuff, and just at the right times. Once when Wilson was floating away, and then another time when the boat was driving by. So just it's kind of silly, but that was the only thing or nitpick that I had about Castaway. A lot of positives on this one. I really can't complain. A lot of positives. I can't really think. I can't really think of anything. I mean, it wasn't the greatest movie ever, and it wasn't something that you'll watch again and again and again. You'll watch it a few times, I think, and maybe revisit it just to kind of experience it again. But I probably won't watch it again for a long time. I mean, I don't have a reason to. It's not a top 100 movie of all time by any means, but it's in my top 50 for sure. I mean, it's probably in my top 50. It's a good solid movie. I would probably give it a rating of 7.5 to about an 8.2, so somewhere up in there, 7.5 to 8.2. It's not a 8 or a 9 movie. I'd probably leave it at 7.5. It's a 7.5 movie. It's no higher than an 8. Movies that are like a 9 and above would be like, I don't know, just classic movies like Gone with the Wind, which I don't care for it. I've actually never seen it, so I don't know why I'm saying that. So I'm full of crap right now. Let me think. I'm drawing a blank right now. I really am. I'm trying to think of just all-time great movies. Maybe like Back to the Future. Let me think. Top Gun Maverick. I feel like that's an all-time movie. Jack and Jill with Adam Sandler. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, Castaway, it's a solid movie. It's not an all-time great movie, but it's a great movie. I really like it. I think it's wonderful. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, it was funny. Today's podcast is brought to you by Colgate. Colgate Total, it whitens your teeth. And it tastes really good, but don't eat too much, you'll get a upset tummy. Colgate. Find Colgate Total at your local Walmart or Walgreens and get your ugly yellow teeth purdied up and white for your next big event. Colgate Total. All right, so we're back, and what I gathered from Castaway, my takeaway from Castaway, my takeaways from Castaway, and what I learned and experienced watching this movie is that love never fails. It's like when you love somebody and you truly love somebody, I mean, that doesn't go away. You just love them forever. A true love is unconditional and it's forever. So I can only imagine losing that loved one and losing that significant other or that spouse. Another thing that I gathered from the movie is to not give up. I mean, it would have been so easy for Chuck just to literally kill himself, give up, and just die. But I think that goes a long way in teaching us a little something about life and that we shouldn't just give up. When things get tough and life gets hard, we don't need to give up. I mean, we just need to push forward and keep pushing because we don't know what's over the horizon. We don't know, what the end of the tunnel holds for us. We don't know what's behind the next door, so we just have to keep pushing forward and not give up. And I think that's a really good lesson that I pulled from Castaway. Be prepared for anything. Love never fails. Don't give up, but be prepared for anything. It's just that's the thing. Like, you don't know when it's your last day on earth. You don't know when you're going to meet Jesus. I mean, you don't know when you're going to face death. So hug your loved ones tight, kiss your loved ones, tell them you love them, make things right with your enemies, make things right with family members. I mean, make sure that you don't have any regrets at any given time because you're not promised tomorrow. I mean, so be prepared for anything. I guess another thing that I pulled from this movie is like, how crazy can we get? As humans, like, how far can we spiral into insanity? Like, if you get pushed to that point, that breaking point, it's like, man, you could really lose your mind, huh? Anybody could lose their mind. It's like, so make sure you keep yourself in check and keep your mental health healthy, your spiritual health, your physical health. All those things need to be kept in check, because I think anybody could lose their mind. Anybody and everybody could lose their crap. And that's what happened to Chuck in this movie. Um, Another thing that I pulled away from the movie is just heartbreak, and life's obstacles will take you by surprise and really put you in difficult places. Heartbreak, it's a part of life. You're going to go through some hurt. You're going to go through some bad times and some obstacles and troubles and trials, but those things may take you by surprise, and those things will put you in some difficult places and some hard places to get through. But again, don't give up. Don't quit. Push through those things. I don't know if you're going through anything like that, if you're listening, but if you're struggling with anything, don't give up. Just push through, and you'll be glad that you did, because heartbreak and the obstacles of life, it's all a part of life, and we just have to find a way to get through it and find a way to push through and keep going, and don't give up. Another takeaway from the movie Castaway: Tom Hanks is a good actor. I don't like him as a person, and I think he's a freak. And obviously, most celebrities are just not good people as far as character. There's no telling what Tom Hanks has done. I've heard rumors and looked into conspiracies and looked into things about him and other celebrities. There's no telling, with that stuff. But all that aside, Tom Hanks is an amazing actor. I mean, I'll give it to him. I don't know if he sold his soul to the devil or what, but he's one of the biggest movie stars, one of the biggest celebrities in the world. He's got an excellent track record. I mean, every movie of his is a hit movie. It's a box office hit. Um, like I mentioned before, the comedy in this very dramatic and heartfelt movie is really good. The comedy is really good. It's not forced. It's pretty natural. And I think a lot of it was ad-libbed. I don't think it was originally in the script. I think Tom Hanks really did kind of ad-lib some of the comedy. But it was great. I thought it was hilarious. Movies nowadays, comedy is so forced. Oh my goodness, it's so forced and so stupid and on the nose. And I can appreciate that subtle hint of comedy that's just very natural and just comes across as, hey, this is pure, true comedic appeal, or whatever you want to call it. My biggest takeaway, I guess, just how it ended. It ended so simple. I wanted a bigger and better ending, but sometimes life does not give you what you want. Life does not give you what you expect. So you have to take what it gives you and what God allows in your life. You got to take it and roll with it. Roll with the punches. So yeah, I think the one of the other big takeaways after watching a movie like Castaway: excellent movie, great acting, great story, very simple but very heartfelt, and it sticks with you a little bit. It sticks with you. Um, Movies just aren't like that anymore. That's one of my big things, that I'm thinking about right now. Is just, I can't think of any movies over the last 5 years that were really like that. Like, there were some cool movies, some exciting movies, like Top Gun Maverick. It was very heartfelt, and it had some great scenes, some great storylines, some great characters and acting. And like, I could compare Castaway with Top Gun Maverick. Like, they were both solid movies. But the majority of movies nowadays, what happened? What changed? But yeah, those were my takeaways from the movie Castaway. And I really enjoyed it. I sat down this evening, took a break, decompressed, relaxed, and enjoyed a good old-fashioned movie. And again, our big question at the beginning of the whole episode: what would you do in that situation? What would you do if you were stranded on an island with nobody else, just you and your survival skills. Me personally, I'd last a week, but I digress. But great movie, and I really hope you enjoyed listening to this little TED talk that I had to myself and to you, and hopefully you enjoyed the conversation and enjoyed the very first episode of the Duder Podcast. Hey there, if you've made it this far into the podcast, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed listening about Castaway, and maybe you gleaned a few nuggets, a few golden nuggets, a few thoughts to ponder during your day. Join me next time on the Duder Podcast with your host, me, Duder. Please comment below, send me a direct message, and give me some ideas for the podcast, as your feedback is always appreciated. And remember this, you're special just the way you are, and I like you just the way you are. Thank you for being you. And I hope you have a blessed day, my friend. Keep your chin up and never give up. Bye-bye.